National Treasury has proposed to increase value-added tax by 1 percentage point from 15% to 16% over the next 2 years. The Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana, tabled the revised 2025 budget in Cape Town yesterday. Treasury says the increase will be characterised by a 0.5 percentage point increase this year from the 1st of May and again next year from the 1st of April. Now, the DA says it will not support the budget and Parliament is still to vote on it. The budget addressed several key points, including the country's current economic status, growth projections, substantial debt servicing costs, increases in VAT as well as sin taxes, and the continuation of the social relief of distress grant. The Minister, Godongwana, joins us now to further discuss the budget. Minister, it's great to have you and thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much.
So, Minister, I've no doubt it didn't come as a surprise, and I'm sure you were expecting more criticisms about the announced VAT increase, albeit at a lower level. Did the National Treasury examine many alternatives that could have been implemented instead of the VAT rate and looked at those perhaps corporate personal income tax, those kind of things?
Let me say all the alternatives were looked into. Let me start by corporate income tax. Corporate income tax at the moment is struggling. We've got the challenges, high electricity cost, challenges with logistics, and therefore any increase attack on that profitability is in fact is an attack on jobs. Let me just give you an example now. We're discussing with the Chrome guys. Glencore is shutting down 7 furnaces in Rationale, the impact of which 13,000 people in overall will be affected. Now, I'm just giving just one example of one company. Now, we've got to choose by taxing this company and putting more people out of employment and therefore and putting them on the SRD in any event. The next set of issues is income category. Out of the 16 million people employed, 7 million are paying income tax. Out of that 7 million, 490,000 only pay 47% of the income tax. So any further increase on that thing is just squeezing these people to the extreme. So I'm giving you this example to say it's not something that we woke up and decided, oh, the best option is let's go for that without looking at the other possibilities. We did.
Yeah. And we realize this. I mean, and there's no minister wants to be the one to stand up and say we need to increase the value-added tax. However, this is a very big worry because commentators that say that even though value-added tax may be only going up 0.5 percentage point, it is lower, it still threatens to stoke inflation and deter consumer spending and hit the poorest of the poor as opposed to looking elsewhere. Your reaction to this?
2 points I want to make up front. The first one, our data shows that 76% of the VAT is paid by the 3 higher income categories, 76%. That's the first point. The second point is that when you increase VAT in all jurisdictions throughout the world, you provide an environment where you cushion the impact on the poor, which we've done at the moment. And among other things, we're increasing the social grants about inflation. We have reduced the fuel price so that it should not have an impact on the cost of transport for the poor. Let me just give you an example. The World Bank has said, if you had to compare a South African worker with a South Korean worker on a rand-to-rand basis, the South African worker gets less disposable income as a result of transport cost. Now, if we were to increase the fuel levy, it would have much impact on the cost of travel and therefore impact on the poor. So we've done or taken a number of things to cushion the impact on the poor. But what is missing, Leon, in this debate? We tend to debate the revenue side. We're not saying what are we trying to fund with this money, which is missing in this debate. And if we don't, what are the implications?
Yeah, and we cannot deny that. We cannot deny that because, Minister, and I think it is important that people do note that the increase in the grants is above inflation. So government is giving. Obviously, this is something that needs to be funded. But I think the idea.
But it's not only the grants, Leon. It's not only the grants.
Yeah.
We're facing a number of challenges in education departments in all provinces. We're facing a number of challenges in health departments in all provinces. By the way, those health departments that are affected are going to affect the poor. Let me just give an example. We say in the statement, between March and December last year, the health departments across the country lost about 9,000 professionals. Now, whose quality of service will be affected by this? It's the quality of service of what people who attend those public hospitals. Now, if we don't fund this thing, it's not only those of us who got medical aid who attend private hospitals. If we don't fund the education which is likely to lose teachers, it's not those of us who've got children in model C that are going to be affected. The poor people in this country are the ones whose services are going to be eroded. Those things are actually directed to minimize the impact on on service on poor people.
If we look at political parties, however, and obviously this is a different situation because you're now in a GNU, and the Democratic Alliance have announced that they will not be supporting this budget in its current form. What is the alternative? Because that surely is something you have looked at, that if it is not 50 plus 1%, you're not going to get this through. And this seems to be a very big sticking point. What is your alternative?
Let me just, before that, what is the issue with the Democratic Alliance? My understanding, I've also spoken to the Democratic Alliance myself, the issue for them is, which got nothing to do with the budget, the issue is they have, they've lost the Bella Bill, they've lost NHI, they've lost Expropriation Act. This is the battle. They're going to use the budget to fight those battles in order to build cohesion in their own national, in their own party. It's got nothing to do with the poor. Let me just clarify that first. The second set of issues is that once you table this thing in Parliament, Parliament has got powers to amend budget. And therefore, political parties are going to be discussing, all of them, with no exception, not only the GNU parties, all political parties will have to engage with the budget. And as the Minister of Finance, I've got to engage all the political parties in order to find a solution to achieve two things: that we continue to fund the poor, and B, we can get the budget passed.
So this is obviously, I mean, as you're saying, something incredibly difficult. But let's take the facts into consideration that we've heard from the MK party they won't accept it. The EFF are saying that they don't want to accept it. The DA saying they don't want to accept it. So it does not look like you will have the majority. But as you say, there are discussions leading up to it. If, and I suppose the question I need to ask you again, if it isn't passed, what is the alternative? Politics aside, what is the alternative to get the shortfall?
Let me just say, politics aside, as you say, the budget will be passed. It may well be not in its present form. It will be passed as a product of discussion and negotiation between the political parties.
Okay.
That, I think, political parties in South Africa are led by a reasonable leadership which will understand the implications for the country. And therefore, we will attempt, all of us, to put the country first above our own interests as political parties to ensure that South Africans can get the service they require.
Yeah. Indeed. All right. Good. That's something we will watch on. But one of the big things, and this I think is highlighted by many people, is the wasteful expenditure. I mean, we've even got the Auditor General's report where it says that billions are lost to irregular spending. Things that you have highlighted yourself, the education department, the health spending, all of these things you allocate. I mean, your job is to allocate these funds so that they can be used in the proper and correct ways, and yet they are not being used in the proper and correct way. Well, certainly not, a lot of it isn't. And this is wasteful expenditure. How do we plug this? Because it's a recurring problem where you could fill the gaps and give the best service with the amount of money that you are allocating.
The starting point is not to say underfund them. The starting point is to say, how do we fund them and then follow through and make sure that we follow the expenditure and make sure that it's done properly. We make the point in the speech that one of the critical points we need to ensure is efficiency of spending. And in the discussion, the president have taken the responsibility that together with Treasury, he's going to lead this charge to make sure that there's efficient spending.
Well, that's something that we've always hoped for, is the efficiency of spending. And that, I think, is where the criticism, again, comes in from opposition parties and South Africans in general, that want to see, firstly, justice being put onto those, and this is not your job, but justice being put onto those that are responsible for looting the state. And certainly the money and the taxes that are collected are put into these institutions that desperately need them so that we can fix the country and get it working. This, I think, is getting it working is probably where we get to in this conversation. How do we grow this economy, Minister? Because the creation of jobs is something that we will see happening, and that is the only way of saving this economy, and you know this.
Look, Leon, I've been following my speech over the past few years as a Minister of Finance. One of the things I've said is, first and foremost, we need to sort the electricity issue. Second, we need to sort the logistics. And thirdly, we need to deal with crime. Now, if you look at this budget, one of the issues we're doing is to increase infrastructure spending. And as an economic classification, the economic development part of the economy of the budget is growing by 8.1% over the medium term. What that means is that we're shifting the composition of budget to focus on investment in infrastructure and growth. So that is but we've got to sort the logistics issue, which is impacting on a number of things. For instance, if I was talking to Kumba, they had about 8 million tons of iron ore, which they can't ship. Mm-hmm. So we need to shift to sort out the logistics as well.
And that's a fact, because besides all of the logistics, there's also building, because infrastructure in investment is a big problem as well, because we are seeing so many unfinished projects. We are seeing a lot of infrastructural projects that need to be embarked in here in South Africa. And this is a way of creating jobs. 33% unemployment, 60% unemployment in the youth. It's not sustainable, and we can't keep on having grants moving higher and people not working. And you know that as a finance man.
Let me just say, in this budget, over the medium term, there's 1 trillion rand that's going to be spent on infrastructure. The key for us is to make sure that each rand is spent efficiently and in an effective way. If that happens, we are likely to generate employment in the economy. So yes, that's a major issue for us.
Let's talk about SARS now, because this has been something, and I'm sure the Commissioner is very happy, because you have allocated more to him and to SARS to effectively collect taxes, because he's been saying he can do it. He can do it. He just needs more. He needs more in his weapons arsenal to make this happen. He's been vocal about government not hiking the VAT rate, but upping this budget allocation, which you have done to the tax agency. You've allocated 3.5 billion rand for this financial year ahead, and an additional 4 billion over the medium term. How much is SARS saying that they can generate in additional revenue?
First, let's correct something. The Commissioner has not been vocal against VAT. Let's clarify that. The Commissioner addressed a webinar sometime in January without aware that I'm thinking about VAT. And in that thing, which is clarified to me, he was saying one of the key things we need to do, no Minister of Finance wants to increase tax of any kind. Ministers of Finance go and increase tax as a matter of last resort. And in this environment, the Commissioner has been talking about making sure that you can increase the capacity of compliance revenue and efficiencies in the tax collection system. And in that regard, they said he needed resources. Over the past 2 weeks, we've had more than 3 meetings with the Commissioner to try and deal with this matter. And we've agreed on the potential revenue is likely to collapse. What we are doing now, I'm not at liberty to go into that detail, because what we are going to do is given us some indicative numbers, which are quite, in my view, interesting, which may, if materializes, we may not even add the 0.5% intent for the next financial year, because that revenue will be sufficient to cater for that. So we are working with the Commissioner, the revenue team of the Reserve Bank, SARS and Treasury will scrutinize those numbers, look at the profile of that revenue. When we talk about profile, is when is it likely to kick in? Because what's likely to happen is that they will have to employ more people, train them, and during that period, there is not going to be revenue. As soon as they start starting the process, then revenue start to come in.
Yeah. Minister, as I wrap this up, one of the things that people have been speaking about, and I think it's important to come from you, is cutting the size of the cabinet, but that is not your mandate. You are not the one who decides on that. But many feel that perhaps it's too top-heavy and bloated, where money could be saved on, for instance, deputy ministers. That's something we've gotten every day for the last 3 weeks since the delay in the budget, and everyone's been weighing in on that. Also, wealth tax, also ad valorem tax rates. People saying, bring in a luxury tax. What do you think of those suggestions?
Look, let me start with this issue of ministers and cabinet ministers. Maybe as a demonstration of commitment to society, that's something that could be done. But will it give me the revenue I require? The answer is no. I need about 34 billion this year. If I were to cut ministers and possibly deputy ministers by any number, the maximum we can get is about 30 million. Now, I'm saying if you include cars, include any other benefits and stuff, that's the issue, the number you can get. I think for optics you can do it, but not to generate revenue. To generate revenue, you need a bigger number than that. So there's a lot that needs to be done. There's no doubt about that. But let me just give an example. People are talking about spending reviews. Some 240 spending reviews have been done. Let me just give you how difficult it's going to be to deal with this thing. People think that within 3 months you can sort this thing. One of the spending reviews suggests that in the properties that government rent, we're probably paying about 45% above market price. Now, to say you can unravel that in 3 months is a dream. I don't care how efficient you are, because part of the difficulty will be fighting vesting interests, all the landlords who may take you to court. So I'm saying part of the difficulty is that people place expectations on revenue you cannot realize tomorrow, which is going to take time to achieve.
All right, Minister, we thank you for your time. We can hear the work that's been put in and what there is still need to be done and all the different avenues that you've looked at, and the Minister outlining that for us. The Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana, with us here on Morning Live, speaking about the revised 2025 budget that was tabled in Cape Town yesterday.